We are born with a mortgage. That mortgage is a debt that we owe to the past and the future. The essayist Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote those words, and, well, I want you to really hold on to them today. Think about it. Literally everything we know, the language we use, the scientific methods we rely on to prove things, all of it was painstakingly built by people who came before us. We owe a massive debt, and the absolute best way to pay it is by sharing our own knowledge with the future. So let's dive right in.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're exploring a seriously fascinating intersection, the soul and science of writing. We're going to bridge the deep, emotional why we write, the empathy and the activism, with the rigorous, technical how of academic structuring and citing. Because here's the secret, right? Passion without structure is just noise, but structure without passion, that's completely hollow.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. We've got 4 main stops. First, the soul of writing. Second, structuring your research. Third, mastering the literature review. And finally, the mechanics of credibility.
All right, Section 1, the soul of writing, focusing on empathy and activism.
So, what actually drives someone to become a change agent? What does one person dedicate their entire life to environmental causes, while someone else becomes a fierce advocate for adult literacy? Well, to answer that, we usually have to look way back to childhood. The author Mary Piper tells this incredibly visceral story from when she was just 7 years old, playing out near the Blue River. She found this tiny green and yellow garter snake. She was totally delighted by it, just holding it in her palm, feeling its little muscles moving. But then, almost on a whim, she decided to see if the snake could swim, and she tossed it right into the icy snowmelt-filled river. The snake sank. It drowned. And, she didn't cry, but in that moment, she learned a huge permanent lesson. Her actions had real life and death consequences. She realized animals weren't just toys. They had their own lives. And it was this early, stark observation of life and death that helped forge the deep empathy that later fueled all of her impactful writing.
Now, that kind of childhood awareness eventually builds into a real understanding of systemic power. A bit later in her childhood, Piffer found out a neighbor was going to kill an entire basket full of baby coyotes. Why? Just to collect a $2 bounty per pair of ears from the county. She was absolutely horrified. She begged her mom, who ended up giving her $2 to save just one single pup. But when she looked into that basket full of wriggling puppies, she realized something crushing. She only had the power to save one. She was dooming the rest to a grisly death. She later said she felt like God in that moment, and she absolutely hated it. This overwhelming feeling of powerlessness in the face of a cruel system, that is exactly the kind of spark that ignites a lifelong drive to help others and advocate for true systemic change.
Piper beautifully describes this whole process as growing our souls. It's this steady accretion of empathy, clarity, and a real passion for doing good. It's basically expanding our capacity to make distinctions and draw connections in the world around us. And honestly, this is the ultimate philosophical engine behind the work we do. It's exactly why we have to share our voices and our observations. But, and this is a big but, just having a grown soul and a passionate message isn't quite enough to actually shift paradigms in the academic or scientific communities.
Which brings us to Section 2, Structuring Your Research, or as I like to think of it, the universal language of science.
See, your passion desperately needs a framework if you want the wider world to understand it. When we step into the realm of academic writing, we have to speak a shared language. Why? So our discoveries can actually be replicated, validated, and used to help people. That's where IMRaD comes in. That's Introduction, Methods, Results, and Discussion. It is literally the universal academic framework that organizes your passionate, messy research into a beautifully logical flow. The introduction tells us, why was this study done? The method section answers, what exactly did you do? The results lay out, what did you find? And the discussion answers the absolute most important question for any reader, so what? What does this actually mean? IMRaD is the magic formula that turns a heartfelt argument into undeniable, actionable evidence.
But before anyone even reads your perfectly structured IMRaD paper, they're going to read your abstract. A lot of journals require a structured abstract with very specific headings: purpose, design, setting, subjects, intervention, measures, results, and conclusions. And get this, you usually only have about 150 to 250 words to do all of that. So a dense, keyword-rich summary is absolutely critical here. It's your ultimate elevator pitch. If your abstract isn't crystal clear and perfectly structured, your findings might literally never be read, no matter how profoundly they could change the world.
Now, if you happen to be conducting the absolute gold standard of research, a randomized controlled trial, or RCT, there's an even stricter structure you have to follow called the consort statement. While regular studies use standard formatting, RCTs require these highly specific flow diagrams. They showed exactly how many participants went through enrollment, allocation, follow-up, and analysis. It's all about guaranteeing total 100% transparency. It ensures your results simply cannot be misinterpreted or accused of bias, which basically makes your empathetic drive for change mathematically bulletproof.
All right, moving into Section 3, Mastering the Literature Review. We are going from a simple shopping list to actual synthesis. So often, writers treat the literature review like this tedious, boring chore, but honestly, it is the most crucial step. It's where you map out what's already known and purposefully pinpoint the exact gaps that your unique voice is going to fill. The biggest trap here is writing what I call a descriptive shopping list of facts. You know the type, author A found this, author B found that. Guys, that's just a list. A powerful literature review requires interpretive writing. This is where you actually bring your own voice into the mix. You critique past research, you connect the dots between findings, and you build a compelling narrative that proves exactly why your new research is so desperately needed.
To make that jump from descriptive to critical writing, you really have to use the language of critique. Don't just state a fact, add some interpretive phrasing. You want to say things like, "This was significant because," or point out a deficit by saying a study was limited in its application. You can even offer strength-based critiques, like calling previous work a pivotal, broad-scope study. Using this kind of language completely elevates your writing. It gives you a strong, authoritative voice and firmly positions you as a true expert entering the academic conversation.
And that brings us to Section 4, the mechanics of credibility. Let's talk APA 7th edition. Okay, I know. It's incredibly easy to look at citation rules of these arbitrary, annoying academic hurdles. But I promise you, they are the essential mechanics that give your work absolute credibility. They're the map you give your readers so they can actually verify your claims. In your text, you basically have two main ways to cite your sources: parenthetical and narrative. Parenthetical citations just drop the author and year at the end of the sentence. Use this when you want all the emphasis squarely on the information itself. Narrative citations, though, weave the author's name right into the sentence, like Smith argues that. You'd use this when you want to highlight the author, maybe to showcase their specific expertise or reputation in the field.
When you're dealing with multiple authors, the APA 7th edition makes it brilliantly simple to keep your text clean. If a work has one or two authors, you list both of them every single time. Easy. But if it has 3 or more authors, you just list the first author's name followed by et al., which is just Latin for and others. It is a total lifesaver. It keeps your paragraphs from turning into a cluttered, unreadable mess of names, letting your reader stay completely focused on your brilliant argument.
Now, at the very end of your document, your reference list has to be absolutely flawless. Luckily, it follows a super logical 4-step sequence. Step 1, who wrote it? Format the authors. Step 2, when was it written? Give the date. Step 3, what's it called? Provide the title using sentence case for things like journal articles. And finally, step 4, where can I find it? Provide the source details. If it has a DOI, a digital object identifier, you absolutely must include it as a hyperlink. And listen, providing accurate DOIs isn't just about following the rules to get a good grade. It's about making sure your readers can effortlessly click through to the original source. That is how your work actually reaches and helps real people.
Oh, and here is a highly specific, but honestly kind of fascinating quirk from the APA manual about alphabetizing your reference list. The rule is, literally, nothing precedes something. What does that actually mean? It means a shorter name will always come before a longer name that starts with the exact same letters. So the author Mill precedes the author Mills, regardless of their first initials. Why? Because the lack of a letter, the nothing at the end of Mill, precedes the S, the something at the end of Mills. I know it seems incredibly minor, maybe even a little pedantic, but this level of meticulous organization sends a massive subconscious signal to your reader. It builds absolute trust. It tells them, I am careful, I am rigorous, and you can absolutely trust my findings.
And that, my friends, brings us right back full circle. We've covered the rigorous mechanics, the IMRaD structures, the interpretive critiques, the meticulous APA formatting. These are your tools, but tools are totally meaningless without the material they're meant to shape. Remember Emerson's mortgage? Remember Mary Pfeiffer's idea that we are here to grow our souls? Well, now you know the strict rules of scientific and academic writing. But the ultimate question still remains. What is the deeply felt, empathy-driven story that only you can tell? Use these rules, master these mechanics, but use them to share your unique, soul-driven message with the world. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope you leave here today feeling ready to write.